Thank you so much, Bob. All right. So it brings us to the Ohel Moed. Me Ohel Moed. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Afal pi shenitna Torah siyag liYisrael mi Sinai, lo ne'enshu alea ad shenishnet lahen ba'Ohel Moed. Said Rabbi Elazar, even though the Torah was given as a fence at Sinai, they were not liable for it, responsible for the mitzvot, or punishable for them if they violate them, until it was nishnet, taught a second time, repeated from or in the Ohel Moed. So this is already setting up a scene that was not familiar to me before reading this, that is imagining the Torah being given to Moshe on Har Sinai, and then kind of given again from the Ohel Moed, from the tent of meeting. It goes on to say a parable, a mashal. This is like a dictate that is written and sealed and brought into the land, but the people of the land are not liable for it until it's been explained to them in the public square. So it's like, okay, if laws are made, no one is actually responsible for upholding those laws until they're made public from a kind of central gathering place, or a place where people will hear them given over directly to them. So too, even though the Torah was given to Israel from Sinai, they were not liable for it until it was taught to them again from the Ohel Moed. I just want to pause for a moment and hear what is stirred for you, what feels curious, or what you feel like does feel clear to you from what we've seen so far. Mar Yehudis, do you have a thought to share?
No, well, actually a question, because in the Hebrew in the beginning, when it says Siyag Yisrael, I thought of where Hashem said, don't get close to the mountain. The Siyag around the Torah, not the Torah itself as being a Siyag. So.
Wait, say that last thing one more time. A siyag around the Torah, as opposed to the Torah being a siyag.
Right.
Beautiful. So when the people are gathered at Har Sinai, there's this kind of perplexing mitzvah to stay away from the mountain. Higbalta min hahar, I think is the language there, that there should be a boundary that did I get that right, Mar Yehudis?
Yeah, that seems that the original pshat about a siyag in connection with Sinai. But it doesn't really fit in with the rest of the midrash. I mean, that approach.
What I'm getting from what you're saying is that
my internet cut out for a moment. Would you please?
Can you hear me? What I'm getting from this is that while the Torah was given at Sinai, it really wasn't given to the common people until after the Mishkan was created. Is that what? It's interesting.
Yeah. Mar Yehudis, my internet cut out for a moment, so I missed what you said before. Would you be willing to say again?
Oh, no, I just said it didn't. That idea of what the siyag is doesn't quite fit in with the rest of the midrash.
Shenitna Torah siyag liYisrael. Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around exactly what to do with that. But it is, you are pointing to surprising language, because to a lot of us, it's familiar, the idea that you're supposed to make a fence around the Torah. You're supposed to make a siyag LaTorah. And here, there's that language is being played with, or evoked at least, that you're meant to, it says, Nidna Torah siyag Yisrael, that the Torah was given as a fence, or that you're saying maybe there was a fence for Israel that's preventing them from coming close to Torah in some way?
Well, I'm suggesting that maybe the physical siyug was a metaphor for the siyagim that people have to put around the Torah itself wherever they go.
Mm. That there's something of already from its inception, from these very first moments, there's an experience of fence around the Torah that becomes core. Val.
Yeah, I was thinking in terms of the difference in what each individual received at Mount Sinai. So there were different levels of understanding.
Yeah.
And not everybody was prepared most people were not prepared to take too much in. It was overwhelming. And so it needed to be reformatted as it were, so that it can become understandable in this world, and how it would apply to individuals and within a society.
There's like a filtering that happens, like almost like Moshe on Sinai is able to handle something that's more. One of the images that we saw was this, like, how is it possible that a burden that's too heavy for 600,000 people can be carried by one person? Like the people couldn't receive Torah, but Moshe was able to. And this feels like you're saying, like, Moshe had the capacity to receive something more unrefined, but then when it comes kind of radiating out from the Mishkan, it comes in a more accessible or human form in some way.
And I was just thinking about what Aaron's role would be. And where Aaron can personify some of the qualities that are required. And if Moshe wasn't able to communicate that, he wasn't able to live on that level. And so
like making it humanly accessible level. That was kind of our own strength. Zach, what are you thinking?
I can appreciate these ideas that have been brought up around like timing of who and or filtering of how it's delivered. But I think one that's like unsatisfying is this idea of lo ne'anshu alea, like this. And then the second time that it's written like that, it says they're not liable for it. But the first time, I think, is more of an accurate translation of the Hebrew, say they're not punishable for it, which it just to me doesn't sit right so much in terms of how I view the role of Torah. And I do see that there are punishments laid out for things not done or things done incorrectly, but just a bit of it that felt a little uneasy for me.
There is something like we might imagine it being cast as like, but people can't really fall in love with Torah, or can't really be nourished by it, or can't really understand it until it comes through. But this is like, it's such a legal frame for something that feels kind of tender, but it's about like, well, if the people didn't really directly receive it on Sinai, can they really be punished for violating it? When do they start? It feels very technical. And at the same time, like it lends itself maybe even going into this next piece here. Zach, do you want to read where the midrash goes now?
Sure.
It goes in a surprising direction, given that, as you just pointed out, it seems to be leaning technical. Peter, were you
Okay.
about to say something? Okay, go ahead, Zach.
In the English or Hebrew or both, what do you prefer?
Either one.
Okay. כך אף על פי שניתנה תורה לישראל מסיני, לא נענשו עליה עד שנשנית להם באוהל מועד. So too, even though the Torah was given to Israel from Sinai, they were not liable or punishable for it until it was taught to them again from Oel Moed, from the tent of meeting. Hadahu dichtiv.
And when it uses
Oh yeah,
the
sorry.
Hadahu dichtiv, this is doing like this is what it means when it says it's bringing in something from somewhere else in Tanakh, and it's bringing this as a proof text. And often the proof text it brings, there's a kind of like feeling of it's weaving here. I don't know if proof text is necessarily the most helpful way for us to think about it, but it's wanting us to see these as deeply interlinked concepts. And here, the source text is so important. It's going to Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, our like most in love with Hashem images. Go ahead and keep reading, Zach.
Okay, so here we bring from Shir Shirim Ad Shehevitiv al Beit Imi ve'el Cheder Horati. So until I had brought him into my mother's house and into the chamber of Cheder Horati, of conceiving or teaching.
So this is a moment in Shir HaShirim when the female character has been out all night looking for her lover, and she talks about she's going to like grasp him, hold on to him, and not let go of him until she brings him into her mother's house. And then there's a kind of concentric circles thing happening there, like out in the street. She wants to bring him into her mother's house, the lover, who very often is understood to be signifying God. Here is maybe signifying the Torah. The Jewish people are holding on to this divine other, bringing them into their mother's house, which that's a phrase that only comes up 4 times in Tanakh. I think at least 2 of them are in Shir HaShirim. There's also one in Ruth. And the image of and the other is Rivka, who goes back to her mother's house. And the sense there seems to be that it is the mother's house is the place where like marital arrangements are made, perhaps. It seems like there's something about commitment and deep connection. And obviously it's also a feminine space. So I'll bring him into my mother's house, and then in the even more concentric circle or more intimate concentric circle into the room where I was conceived. And here they go on in this beautiful fleshing out midrash moment. What does Beit Imi mean? What is my mother's house? That is Sinai, which already is amazing to conceive of Sinai as the mother's home, is like the kind of quintessential feminine space. Like all of that fire and smoke, that is the mother's house. Al Cheder Horati, and to the room where I was conceived, or the room of my conceiving. Ze Ohel Moed. This is the tent of meeting. Shemisham nitzavu Yisrael b'hora'ah. And it's playing with the phrase hora'ah, teaching, and horati, conceiving. So it's imagining that Sinai is an intimate space, but it's not the most intimate space. And wanting to bring Torah or the divine other into an even more intimate space, that's the place of teaching and learning. I'd love to hear reactions to this set of images. What do you think it means that that we bring the Torah into such an intimate space, that's the yearning, that they're imagining with the Torah being taught from the Ohel Moed? And you can also add the question of what does it mean that that this is how this is the kind of colorful texture it's adding to the legal questions of when we become obligated in mitzvot or punishable for mitzvot. Mar Yehudas, please.
Well, I have a little foreshadowing since the beginnings of everything are kind of like the seed of the whole. I keep thinking of Nadav and Avihu and the like kind of approach avoidance. And I once read a teaching from the Shem Shmuel. He said, like every nation had their test of accepting the Torah. So what was Bnei Israel's test? Of not getting too close to the mountain.
Wow.
So there's some very intense energy that's coming out. And I think the punishment is more the consequence of not being able to contain what's being, revealed. So like in a relationship, if you get too close and you're not ready for the relationship, it can break you apart.
Yeah, there's a beautiful teaching from Yemima Avital, who is a mystic teacher, and where she talks about also seemingly commenting on the line that you've been referring to, Mar Yehudas, about staying back from the mountain. She says, "Umi shemakshiva hetev teda hitkarvut kenochachas al makoma," that one who listens well will experience or know approaching, coming close, while being present in her place. And that to me sounds like it's kind of drawing out what you're talking about with relationships, of how sometimes the boundary, the distance, if we're able to listen well across that boundary, that we can really be present to the other from being in our own place. Charlotte, what are you thinking over there? Wait, I think you're on mute still. Charlotte, we can't hear you yet. Try one more time.
How's
There
that?
we go. There we go.
The main picture I'm having is of a mother breastfeeding, and that is the most intimate nurturance that anybody can ever get or can ever give. It's so total. And so it's saying that the mother and the child are one. And so this is sort of the picture that I'm getting as we're talking about, that you're saying that Moses was able to receive that. He had the capacity, but it takes a lot for another human being to really first listen with everything they have, but then really have that closeness that one has, a baby, an infant, because we were in our infancy as a people, with the force of God. So that's what was in my mind.
Thank you. It's beautiful. It's so tender, I think, to talk about the space, like bringing the lover in to that space of conceiving. I've been wondering if conceiving is a good word in English, because we also use it for conception and we also use it for like conceiving of ideas. If that kind of starts to approximate how we might think about the kind of like generation of, or generating of Torah or meaning from Torah. I think this piece is a real mystery, but I also want to invite you to bring it with you into Shavuot as we go into thinking about what it is to receive Torah, to have this this kind of set of images. I wonder if we can experience it as an invitation to be patient with how we take Torah in. That it's like there's one mode of receiving that's kind of a vertical receiving, but that's not necessarily available all the time. We're not always able to let that in. And then there's more of a vertical mode, horizontal. That's like the way that the Ohel Moed is just in the center of the camp, that it can be kind of radiating out, like almost like we need to bring Torah in, down or in, and then bring it into the even more intimate place to let it really, to really experience it as ours.
You know, Hannah, I'm thinking about this now as we're getting into like spring and summertime here, and I love camping and backpacking, and I like think of like the difference of, let's say, on a camping or backpacking trip, the difference in the energy between, you know, I think about a trip where maybe make a base camp somewhere near a lake, and then have more of like a adventure type experience going up to the summit of a mountain. And this idea is not fully developed yet for me. I'm kind of like thinking this through as I'm talking about it, but just considering that kind of duality, like as it relates to me, and the different energies of those two locations, of like going up to the summit of a mountain, starting at the base camp, and then coming back down, and how each of them offers kind of different different energies and different lessons, and how that
Can you
applies
the
in,
difference of the energies of them, Zach?
you know, each one is so different, but I do think of like the base camp energy as being like stable and comfortable. I mean, less so than like our home, but in that space, it's like, okay, I'm back home, and there's a certain comfort of knowing where my things are, and yeah, that there may be weather coming in, but I can always get into my shelter. Whereas like going up to the summit of a mountain is like a really powerful time. And you just like working so hard to get somewhere with a group of people typically, and then you obtain this like immense view or some sort of lesson or revelation along the way. I'm trying to like I said, I'm just like thinking this through, like what is the difference between those two things, and maybe how it relates to like the difference in like receiving, or the difference in the energies between those two locations, and how it may relate to kind of this like stepwise receiving of the Torah like that's happening.
I wonder if part of what it's talking about, I really appreciate that distinction between like the intensity and awe and outside of normalness of being at the top of the mountain. And wondering if part of what this is saying is that there is an experience, like that experience awakens us to something, but it's actually when we're in that more settled place that we can integrate Torah for how we live, that it lands in us in a different way, or it can structure our lives in a way that might be different.
Well, yeah,
Yep.
well, it's certainly more permanent, you know, whereas like going up to the mountaintop is a very fleeting, temporary moment. So maybe that's part of it too, is yeah, integrating it into life in more of like a day-to-day fashion, in part of like our daily rhythms, rather than just like an amazing moment of revelation.
Almost to say, like, taking in Torah is not meant to be a peak experience. Like, you're actually not able to totally integrate it when it's in peak experience mode.
Yeah.
Peter,
Yeah.
what are you?
That's good.
So, thank you. I'm a little struggling with the two almost opposite images of the tent of the meeting. One, it's a very intimate space, and it's very powerful and emotionally charged, but very intimate. And the other, it's a public meeting space where proclamations go out. So it's almost like the Torah is big on the inside and the outside. I mean, it's these opposites. And I'm just struggling. I mean, it's really interesting imagery, and I never thought of it in either of those. So, but I'm just curious if where this is heading for you in that sense.
Yes, thank you for that public-private tension. I actually hadn't noticed how those are total opposites in Paul. And
Yeah.
yet
Yeah, I was going to say something similar to Zach and Peter, that the parallel seems to be like dating and a romance. You know, you go out on different external experiences, but then if you want to have a permanent relationship, you have to take it home and have more privacy and continuity about it. And some people say, yeah, a successful romance is not necessarily a successful, continuation of relationship. So they are two kind of opposites.
Interesting. In the Shira Shirim image, the lover says, I'm going to like grab hold of him and bring him home with me, and I won't let him go until I get into the house. And in a way, just thinking of what you're saying about romance, it's like, it's kind of funny that she will let him go once she gets into the house, that there is a release once there's a kind of container. Or yeah, Val.
Yeah, I don't know if this was said, but the people helped create the Mishkan. And so there is a sense of ownership and creativity and participation. And you have in creating a sacred space. And I think that gives people a context and strength to be able to receive things more easily.
That when you've been part of building it, or it made elicit an openness. Thank you. Peter, I wish I had like this is how this all fits together. And I actually am very much still like puzzled by what's happening here. And I know that I love it, and I don't totally know what it means, which I think is part of the like delicious mystery of it, is that there is something, somehow it feels intuitive, both that the Ohel Moed is the public square, and also that it's the most intimate of intimate spaces, that it's like the innermost part of the camp, which it's so appropriate that the core of the community space would on the one hand be the place from where things are broadcast, and that it would also be the kind of most protected place within the community. It is strange for it not to be clear if like the language Hadahu dichtiv, this is the meaning of the passage, sounds like what we're about to read should be totally parallel to what we read a second ago. And yet it's saying there's something totally echoing here, and it's our mystery to kind of unpack what are the coherent echoes, and where is there productive tension between these images. I want to leave these beautiful open questions simmering, and to share with you the last midrash in Vayikra Rabba. So last week we looked at some of the midrashim that are dealing with Moshe's prophecy, how his prophecy is different from other Jewish prophets, other prophets in the Torah, how Jewish prophets are different from other prophets. And indeed, our chapter ends back on the theme of prophecy. And in a way, celebrating how singular Moshe's prophecy was, and also opening up what we can do with that. So here we are. This is the 14th midrash in this series. There is, like, if you look on Sepharia, you'll see a 15th midrash in this chapter, but it is a later edition according to Margaliot, who's the scholar whose version I've been working with. So this seems to be in early versions of Vayikra, but this is the closing of our chapter. So it says, Ma bein Moshe l'chol nevi'im. What's the difference between Moshe and all of the other nevi'im? Or what does Moshe have that the other ones don't have? Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Ilai, Rabbanan. Sorry, Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Ilai. There's two different opinions we're going to get to see about this. And the first was Rabbi Yehuda says, when the prophets were beholding the divine, whatever that means, to be beholding the divine, it seems like there's, the image here is visual. It was through 9 aspectlariot, which here is translated as mirrors, but it could be more, maybe lenses is a better word. So it was through 9 aspectlariot. It's almost like a looking glass. This word is used in a couple of kind of magical places. I'll just share. It's used in there's a midrash that talks about Bnei Israel crossing the Red Sea, and it says that everyone experienced this miracle, and it talks about how pregnant women's bellies became like an aspectlaria, this kind of lens, such that even fetuses at the crossing of the sea could witness the miracle and the divine presence there. So these are looking glasses through which the divine can be seen or obscured, perhaps. And then it says Hadahu dichtiv. That's our phrase from the last one also. This is what it means when it says, and here it has a much more obvious proof text. And here it does a brilliant move where it counts to 9 looking glasses by counting the number of uses of the root to see in this phrase from Yechezkel, from the book of Ezekiel. So I've highlighted in yellow each time it appears once, and I highlighted in orange here to show the plural at the end of this word makes it count for 2. So we have which is already, you can hear it, it's totally redundant. This is like the vision that was like the vision that I saw, when I came to destroy the city. The vision was like the vision I had seen when I came, or it's like the vision I saw was like the vision I had seen when I came to destroy the city, the very same vision that I had seen by the Chabar Canal. Forthwith I fell on my face. And so here it's saying that this Yechezkel's prophecy here is happening through all of these, like, I saw it through the thing I saw, which means there were all of these lenses obscuring his vision. But Moshe had just one lens through which he saw. When God says, I speak to him in a vision and not through riddle. And here we just have the word mar'ah once. So we know clearly Moshe only has one aspectlaria that comes between him and seeing the divine. And then it goes on to say the rabbi's opinion. And they pivot this a little bit. Instead of saying it's 9 verses 1, the rabbis say, Rabbanan Amrin, Kol HaNevi'im ra'u mitoch aspectlaria meluchlechet. It's not necessarily that the prophets saw God through so many lenses, but actually it was through a dirty lens, or an impure lens. We'll just go dirty. Hadahu dichtiv va'anochi chazon hirbeti uviyad hanevi'im adameh. And here, this quote from Hosea seems like it says, I saw lots of visions, but the way that it's being drashed is, I saw it with double vision. Like, it just wasn't clear. Does that make sense, that what's happening drastically there? As if it's saying, like, when it says I saw many visions, it's as if like I couldn't see clearly. It was multiple. But Moshe ra'a mitoch aspeklaria mutzuchtzachet. But Moshe saw through a polished lens. Hadahu dichtiv utmunat Hashem yabit. That Moshe saw the likeness of God. So I just want to ask before we go on to this next piece, what do you make of the lenses? How do you understand what's happening there? And what do you make in the different number of lenses? Or really, like, why does Moshe have to have a lens? Even the person who sees with the greatest clarity still has this something obscuring. Why do you think that's there? Yeah, Maria Hudas, please.
Yeah, so I think it's connect the idea of Panai lo yera'u. They can't see my face. So, but even the clear lens is one step removed from actually seeing the face, because otherwise people again would be blown out of existence. They wouldn't have that protection of some kind of separation between the finite and the infinite.
So it might sound like this is like a limitation, but it's actually what allows for it's like as much intimacy as possible still needs to be obscured in some way because we can't have direct exposure to them. So it goes on and says, Rabbi Pinchas, taught in the name of Rabbi Hoshaya, this is like a king who allowed himself to be seen by the members of his household. And there's two different versions of how this kind of gets preserved, either as bi'ikonin shalo, which would be to say like through his image, like through statues of himself, or ba'otnin shalo, in his private chambers, as if there's only like one most intimate space or where the king allows himself to be witnessed. And it goes on to say, and this is how it concludes the chapter, in this world, the Shekhinah manifests itself only to chosen individuals, just to special people, individuals. Aval latid lavo, but in the time to come, the glory of Hashem will be revealed. V'nigla chavod Hashem v'ra'u chol basar yachdav. That the glory of God will be revealed and all flesh will behold it together. We'll see it together. And so as much as we hear about the particulars of what makes Moshe have this access to witnessing the divine, ultimately there's this aspiration that all people, even maybe all creatures, will come to have the sensitivity or the capacity to be able to do that kind of beholding. I want to invite you to get out your pen and paper and we'll do a little reflecting here. Again, I'm going to read a phrase out loud and invite you to write it down. And then we'll do some writing, kind of harvesting the insight that comes through for you in response to this learning.
Sorry, but I have to go prepare for my other class. So
Okay, thank you so
thank
much.
you so much. It was really
very,
very enjoyable.
wonderful. Great to have you with us.
And if I don't see you before June, Hatzlacha Rabba.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Is this the last class of this?
This is the last class of this series.
Were the early ones recorded?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I'll try to listen.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye. All right. I invite you again to have your pens out. So too, even though the Torah was given to Israel from Sinai. They were not liable for it until it was taught to them again. From the tent of meeting. I'm skipping a bit. My mother's house. This is Sinai. The chamber of my conceiving. This is the tent of meeting. Let's take 3 minutes now for writing, harvesting the insight that comes through for you and what you understand here. Another 30 seconds. inviting you to wrap up your thought. I would love to hear some of your harvested insight. What feels clear to you or illuminating here?
Who are you talking to?
To everyone, would you like to share first, Charlotte?
Well, if you want me to. I'm just saying that to understand both the legality and the path of living a good life was more than people could possibly take in at one time. It was too overwhelming. So a structure was given, and the structure were the words. And because they seem simple, but they have to explore them means they have real depth. But you first take a look at that, which seems simple, and then when you go into your mother's house, when you are with others, and when you are with those whom you love, the love is together as you learn together at a greater depth. And a shared learning gives greater depth because there's the interfacing and the discussion and the questioning, and so that you get to a much deeper place, and then you're more available to learning at a greater pace. I don't want to say pace, at a greater depth, I guess is the best way to say it. And there's always more. It's never quite enough. So that's what I kind of wrote about.
I hear this like digesting when it comes close, and also a sense of kind of ongoing flow.
Yes.
There's always more. Thank you, Charlotte. Anyone else like, oh, Val, would you share with us?
Sure, and I'm going to turn off my video so it may be more stable. How often do we need to be taught the unlearned lessons of a lifetime? How do we build a meeting place for past and future? How do we enter the nowness of a moment?
Well, I so appreciate you bringing this midrash to the question of kind of what Torah essentially is for us. That bridge of past and future, and each of those images you offered felt like, oh, it like helps digest what the Torah itself is, that we're trying to understand its inception. Thank you. Anyone else like to share your thoughts? You sat with us.
I'll share something, because I think going to your mother house, it's just going to your inside. You do practice the Torah and the holidays, the way you want to, in a way that makes you really a good Jewish practice person. Because for me, I remember from my childhood, my parents celebrate all the holidays, and every holiday was very, very special, no matter what. And I'm continuing doing it because it's like a medicine for me. It's like a circle of medical thing. For me, the holiday is my breathing desire to bring it to the world. And each holiday has a different meaning. And that's what you do. you're going from abstract, you're getting from Mount Sinai. Oh, everybody gets it. Oh, maybe it's not that important. But when you go inside, when you go to your mother and you behave it and you practice it, that's what I do.
Mm.
And I love it. I love it because I do it for my own example, because every holiday I have a celebration and I have people around me. This is the way I celebrate holidays. I don't do it for myself only. So that's what I'm talking about. And the Torah teaches us so many things. You know, it is an opening to invite others to share it together with you.
I love that. To me, it feels, Esther, like you're evoking a kind of matriarch image of
It's
like that's the place where it really comes to life. Is
exactly. That's what it is. You practice the holiday, every holiday, because I see many Jewish people don't know what is Shavuot or whatever. I live with a lot of Jewish people that eat non-kosher food, you know, and things like that. And this is not the key. That's not the answer. You have to practice it,
Mm.
and you have to doing it in
there's
indeed.
something embodied in what you're talking about,
Exactly.
lived and
Exactly.
embodied.
Yeah, that's what for me it's all about.
Thank you.
I'll volunteer and do it quick. So I was focusing on liable and taught, the verb taught, and its benefits and responsibilities. And it was the Torah is gifted to us at and through the tent of the meeting. And Sinai and the tent are both physical spaces. Sinai is the birthing of Israel. Tent of the meeting is the enduring location for teaching. But tent of the meeting is a separate space from Sinai. Tent of the meeting became the temple, became the local synagogue, became this Zoom call. But also tent of the meeting is our home. And it's that's, both of them together are the tent of the meeting.
Yeah.
I love the sense of a chain of how the tent of the meeting, whatever that gatherings, I feel you played out that tension between the public space and the intimate space in the chain you illuminated there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alan, would you like to share?
Thank you. So I was kind of struck with just some interesting parallels. These talks, and you mentioned at the beginning, talks of conception of can be thinking, or it can be a birthing or a pre-birth, sort of thing. The awe that I imagine, imagining myself at, if I imagine myself at Sinai and just completely overpowered, totally beyond, I mean, my whatever power I would have as a human, gone in that moment, overpowered by the sheer awe of Hashem, having and so anything that I would receive in that moment, gone when I leave that, I would have, that becomes the seed to go and to the Ohel Moed and have that as the space. There's all this of conceivability and all that stuff. A lot of feminine imagery here, connecting to the Shekhinah, I think, a feminine power of how we might experience in Jewish metaphysical understanding with God. And so there's the place where I imagine one might engage with God, and further coming to it being the Ohel Moed with all this feminine energy and conceivable talk feels like a womb to me. I'm starting to feel it as a womb. And so coming there, and it's a place of feeling secure despite the awesome completely overpowering imagery of Hashem. And it's there, I think, at the juncture between the human experience of living two lives, a spiritual, otherworldly life, and our regular lives, that I might come to then, in a place of sort of emotional regulation, come to integrate the Torah. And so I feel it's an appropriate space for that.
Beautiful. It's almost like two different, I almost feel like we've talked about this in class before. It's like two different versions of selflessness. That there's one where like any hooks of self just get blasted away and there's nothing to catch the Torah in the Sinai space. And then the selflessness within the womb space of just being cared enough that you can be relaxed and open and receptive. I thank you. Thank you.
You know, we have also a blessing, Moadim lesimcha. Moadim lesimcha, it's the holiday for happiness.
I love the idea of having the Ohel Moed in
Yes,
this
exactly.
womb
It's
model.
the same root.
That
It's all the
blessing.
same root.
I'll just share my sense at the end of playing with this was that the Ohel Moed as a space of giving forth and of receiving, conceiving as receiving and yielding forth something new.
Exactly.
Wishing everyone a really fruitful and beautiful Shavuot. I want to offer, Zach, do you want them a moment to share a phrase from what you harvested in your...
Yeah, sorry, I was outside and all of a sudden it started raining. So, but I appreciate everybody's insight. And I think I am working on my understanding of this. And I'm going to take all this to my Ohel Moed to really receive it at a later date.
So, wishing everyone a really wonderful, wonderful Shavuot. It's so beautiful to learn with you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
Good Shavuot.
Thank you.
Bye.